Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brice. Obviously, we have another day of basketball. As we're going to talk about things, about things we can talk about, obviously, during this time, trying time, to talk about different discussions and topics and whatever. So, we're going to do what we can do. We're going to have another show today where we're going to talk. Yeah, if you notice, my shows have been very my opinionated shows, just my opinions on certain situations, questions that have been asked. And today will be, again, it'll be more NBA focused in terms of just who are the best players in certain aspects of the game. So obviously you might hear repeat players, you might hear different players, you might be surprised at a player I say, we know the obvious picks. But yeah, I feel like these opinionated shows go well. I think it's good to get, what I think out there. And just, to ever interact with somebody, because these are discussions that you have with your friends about basketball. These are discussions you have at the barbershop. And, everybody gives their opinion on something, and then you give your opinion on something. And I feel like that's what I'm trying to do right now, is I'm just trying to tell you what I think about certain things. Almost like it's a conversation, okay, well, this is okay. You think he's the best? Well, I think he's the best because of this. Just different things like that, really. Just trying to keep it real for you. So, today we're going to talk about all types of different things. Just basically, what are the best type of players in basketball? First, we're going to start with best shooters in basketball. We're going to talk about best shooters. This is not any order. This is not ranked. Literally, we're just talking. I'm just going to talk, and then when as much of time permits, we'll see how many players I get in there, and we'll just talk. That's basically it. There is no time on this. It's just until the time the segment permits, and we'll go from there. So, best shooters in basketball. So, obviously, we know the obvious ones, Clay and Steph, are like the top two in the game. Steph revolutionized the game. He made the game different because the three has always been more than the two, but we've had great 3-point shooters, but we've never had a 3-point shooter like Steph, whose entire offense is basically predicated on his 3-point shot. Where basically, if he averages 27 a game, you would think 17, 16 of those points are all threes. Where literally he's averaging what some people don't even average ever in a season, just off threes alone. And so, obviously he changed the game. And then Klay Thompson, obviously, being the other splash bro, he's more of a do-it-all kind of guy, but also still having such an elite 3-point game. I mean, they both revolutionized the league in that way because you have to defend it every play because they can shoot from after half court and they can kill you with it. And they can hit it. Like, the thing is that before in the league, you may be able to have somebody who can shoot it, but it was considered a bad shot. And if you missed it, everybody's like, well, why did you take the shot? Why would you take a bad possession? Now, in the league where Steph Curry has created, you take those shots because they're not bad shots anymore. If it goes in, everybody's happy. If it goes out, might be some questions, but it won't be as bad as it was if you took that show back in the 2000s. It's obviously changed how kids grow up because now kids are working on their half-court threes and trying to be able to shoot from every part of the after you cross half court, because they're trying to become what they say the next Steph Curry. They're trying to become a guy who has the range. And it also, one reason why it was so incredible is not just you're like a couple of inches or feet behind the 3-point line. Guys are like 6, 8, 10 feet from the 3-point line shooting threes, and I think that's what makes it so impressive. That's what makes it so crazy. That's what makes it so wild, because it just changed the game in that way. It really did. It changed the game in that way. It made things different. It made things better for that. And I think that's what makes it so incredible when you get down to it. Like I said, last show, I talked about another shooter who's one of the best shooters in the game. Everybody talks about Devin Booker. Devin Booker is one of the best shooters in the game, and nobody talks about him because he's on the Phoenix Suns. It really shows you when you're on a bad team, nobody talks about you. Nobody really acknowledges you. Like, they don't. They don't acknowledge you. They don't talk about you or anything. So some people have to really either be keeping up with your career, be a fan of that team, and then the occasional highlight that a big, sporting outlet will give you the chance to, talk about, see, experience, learn, things like that of a player. Devin Booker's one of those guys, like I said, one of the best shots in the game. He can shoot it from everywhere. He's been a great shooter since Kentucky. He's always been a guy who, you always had to watch out for because his ability, his skill has always been one of the best in the game, and you can't hate that. You can't hate that. He's a guy who, when he probably gets on a better team, there will probably be more there where players and teams and everybody and the people around the league that watch the league will watch him and actually see how good of a shooter Devin Booker really is. He's one of the best shooters in the game in that regard. Another guy who's a great shooter in the game, marksman. I just want to give credit to Bartons out of Washington. He has become a marksman for Washington, a weapon that they found this year. A guy who can shoot the three excellently, shoot it continually, and shoot it at a great clip. You've seen him light it up from three on Washington's team. Nobody talks about him, but he's a guy who will probably be one of those Kyle Korver type guys, elite 3-point shooter. And obviously, again, for a lot of 3-point guys now with the league changing, it's not just, okay, pick three, screen three. There's a lot of guys who can now handle the ball and create a shot with the three, or be able to get that 1-2 quick dribble, get some extra space, hit a three. And he's one of the guys who, part of that new NBA coming in, who's now developing that type of ability to shoot the long range shot. So he's definitely a guy that you have to look out for and be like, okay, this guy can shoot the best. I'm gonna talk about a guy who nobody really thinks of was one of the best shooters in the game, but I think he is. It's Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is one of the best shooters in the NBA. People don't look at Damian Lillard like that because he has such a complete game, but he is one of the best shooters in the game. You think those 2 playoffs game-winning threes were not like right at the 3-point line. They were back. Clearly he has range and he can shoot it from all over, and he can get hot from all those angles too. I don't know why Damian Lillard doesn't get the same shooting love as others, but he's one of the best shooters in the game. He's a guy who can light it up from the 3-point line, light it up from mid-range if he has to. He's a guy who you definitely cannot sleep on when he takes shots. A guy who really just, I think, never has gotten sometimes the appreciation he deserves as a point guard in general, but has always done the right things and always have done the things that he feels like is best to help the team win on a night-to-night basis. Him and CJ. So, Damian Lillard also one of the best shooters in the game. And also, Trae Young. Trae is interesting because his shot coming out of college is more of like it kind of seems like a set shot. Trae kind of got it's not as fluid as Curry where he can just boom boom shot. See, Trae, it feels like he has to set it a little bit when he shoots it. That's why I feel like when it comes to just pure shooting conversations, if you're just saying, okay, 3-point contest, I understand why he didn't get it, because he's kind of, he has that time crunch, but Trae's kind of like, he has to really get the time to get his form together and everything. That's why he's been working on trying to be able to have a quicker release. That's one of the reasons why his average went up in points, because this offseason he worked on off the dribble shooting. Because remember, with that shot, it's hard to shoot off the dribble if you're a set guy. So he worked on that, and I think that's why, Trae has become such an excellent scorer now, just because he was able to improve his shooting in how he shoots the three. And now that's why, even though he may not have the greatest numbers in the world, you know Trey, as soon as he cross half court, could beat you with the three. You don't know how many Hawks games I've watched this year, and I've seen Trey just wet it from deep. And it really just shows with him, because he's the guy who always comes out there and just goes out there and is a great person to watch play. So, but that was my best shooters in the game, in my opinion. Obviously, like I said, there's no ranking, there's no list, so I've obviously missed people. It happens. But coming up next, we're going to talk about best ball handlers in the game right here on the podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the best shooters in the game. Just guys, I named some guys off. Obviously, I had to talk about the GOATs. You had to talk about guys maybe I thought was underrated. Other guys that maybe people don't talk about. You know, things like that. You know, everybody needs to give love to where love is needed. Because, you know, obviously shooting the basketball now is such a big part of basketball. Like, the game has changed because of Steph. And if you can't shoot, really, and it's getting to a point almost where if you can't shoot at all five positions, you're kind of a liability out there on the court, because it's just the mindset and the strategy of always having everybody on the court who could get a three ball. Makes everybody have to play you up, but also create space for maybe people who can get into the lane. So it's kind of it's a game of it's an interesting game. And I think that's also one reason also why I think the Euro players, overseas players, are so much more in demand, because usually, even if you're a big man or a point guard in the Euro leagues and overseas, they teach you how to shoot at an early age because they look at it as a part of fundamentals. So that's why you're able to see all these big men come into the league and be able to shoot instead of, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, Americans, AAU system, and unless the dad or somebody or they say to themselves, all right, I'm gonna learn how to shoot some shots from the 3-point line, or at least mid range. I'm working post, I'm working rebound, I'm working defense, I'm working blocking. So, but now we're gonna get into best ball handlers in the game today. Obviously, again, you got to start with the GOAT, Kyrie Irving. Obviously, if you've seen Kyrie Irving play, I mean, what can I say? I mean, this man, cross you up. This man is one of the few players who have handles like he playing street ball in the NBA. This man has that basketball on a string and can go in any direction so quickly, so fast. It's so hard to guard him. That's why he's one of the most talented, gifted scorers we have, and one of the most, some people like to say, one of the most beautiful basketball players we have to watch play, because he does work in this artistic way with his handle, and then how he, you know, goes up with the touch and how he goes up with the smoothness of his game, and, you know, all goes back to his handle, and that's why Kyrie Irving has been looked at as the guy who has the best handles in the entire game. Because if you've seen his handles, you know how great they are. You know this man can stop on a dime and switch directions like it's nothing. And so that's why, again, Kyrie is one of the hardest guards in all of the NBA, just because of his handle. He's one of those guys you really, you know, you stay on top of, because you know, like, this man, I don't know what he's about to do, but I'm holding on. I'm holding on. So I think that's going to be like the big thing, really, to me, that has really been shown here in the grand scheme of things. So, obviously, you got to give Kyrie some love, Uncle Drew, for what the magic he's been able to put on any team. Best handles, one of the best, considered the best finisher in the game, all of it. So, you know what's up when it comes to Kyrie Irving and his ball handling ability. A guy that I also think has great ball handles, but also people don't talk about, is Steph Curry. People forget with Steph. Well, I mean, the reason why I think we forget with Steph about his handles is because, like I said, he's so great at the three ball. You just don't think about him being this great ball handler. But Curry can stop on a dime with his handle and dribble and cross people up and really, put you on skates if he has to. He's done it before. There are so many highlights if you look at his early career, especially. He hasn't really done it as much later in his career as he did when he was on the uprising. But Curry's handles is one of the best in the game. I think that, it's one of the reasons why he's so great. That's why he's able to get the 3-point shot, because his handle is so good. You have to respect that, which then you don't want to do it and give him space, but you kind of feel like, listen, we know Curry is a 3-point specialist, but he can get past you and get to the rim. So don't just think he's a one-trick pony, and if he ain't shooting the three, that's all he gonna do. Like, he can use his handle, get past you, and get to the rim. And I think people forget that Steph has that type of handle, that type of game, because again, we're so focused with how he shoots the three ball that we forget that his handles are one of the best in the NBA today, and why that has made him such an effective player, because he wouldn't be as effective as a player if he didn't have the handles that he had, and that's why he's also somewhat known as revolutionary. So, that's kind of the big thing there. Also, another guy with great handles, Trae Young. Obviously, you've seen it more. You've seen it a lot with the nutmegging and the just all the highlights you've seen since Trae Young's really blew up this year. You've seen most of his highlights. He does some type of dribble handle move, gets himself open, creates space, knocks it down, does a lot of things, and it just isn't. It's like, whoa, this man is out here doing it big. He's out here doing them up, and it creates just this. It really makes you realize for all these players how important having a handle is, because if you have the handle, you're one of the hardest guards in the NBA. Because it's all part of the offensive package. You can't have, a great offensive game unless you can overpower or you're faster. It's not like that. It's like you have to have all of that to make it all work. So I think that's very important too. I think also, Kemba Walker, I think, also has an underrated handle. If you remember the handle that he used to help get himself open to make that shot in UConn, again, would not be possible without him having the handles he has. Kemba Walker can dice you up with the dribble. Like, don't forget, if you notice the theme of all these scores, they're all great scores because they all have a handle that can get them open. He can dice you up. He can break you down. That's what makes him such a great offensive weapon, just because of the fact he has the type of handle that he has to be able to get open, to be able to create that space that he needs to take the shots that he takes and knock them down. That's why Kemba is going to be known as one of the best scorers in the game, because of his ability to play at that level. Like I said, Kemba, since he was in Charlotte most years, never got the appreciation that a lot of players have gotten. But if you really pay attention, you know this man's game. You know this man's handles is one of the best in the league. You know it is. Because if you watch him, you know. But last guy also I want to talk about with handles is Chris Paul. Chris Paul has never been a guy who uses handles necessarily to break you down in a way like Curry and Trey and Kemba and all of them. He's used his handle to keep you on your toes, which could open up, potential lanes being open for passes. Remember, Chris Paul is what we consider the last remaining true pure point guard in the league, and his handles have always been great. He uses it to set his own shot. He uses it to set up other teammates. His handle is more effective in terms of the team. But Chris Paul has always been known as a guy, he can put that basketball on a string if he has to create his own shot. Because listen, every great shot creator usually has a handle. That's usually how it goes, and he's one of the guys who's shown on a day-to-day basis. But those are the best foul ball handlers in the game. Next segment, we're going to talk about the best scorers in the NBA, just pure scorers in the NBA, right here on the podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about best ball handlers in the game. I named a couple of guys that we know all have great ball handles skills to help create their shot. These guys are absolutely terrifying to guard. One of the hardest guards in the league, not because they're more powerful than you or they're quicker than you. Just when they break you down with the dribble, it leaves you on your toes. It puts you on skates. And sometimes that's why you get all the trick highlights from these guys, because it's just those are the guys who are truly difficult to keep up with, challenge, keep your defensive posture, and be able to keep up with them at the same time. Like, really, truly is one of those people who is difficult to, guard. They're not easy guards whatsoever. So those were the best ball handlers in the NBA that I gave. I think I gave about 5 last segment. So obviously that was that discussion. But now we're going to get into the best scorers in the NBA. Some of the best scorers in the NBA. Obviously, we have to talk about, to go to this category, James Harden. James Harden has shown for years that this man is scoring at unbelievable feats. And somehow this man's scoring average goes up year after year after year after year. James Harden just continues to reinvent himself in the offseason, improve his offensive game. He has probably one of the smoothest games ever, because he can break you down with the dribble, then come up with the three-point shot. I mean, listen, he could have been in the last segment for best ball handlers because of that. He can break it down, get to the paint, break it down. He can probably hit the mid-range, hit the three. His offensive game is just so dynamic, so complete. I mean, that's why they say he's one of the hardest guards on a night-to-night basis. When you play Houston, it's like whoever got to guard him, it's just like, oh, brother. I mean, literally, it's not even a position, because usually, point guard guards point guard, shooting guard guards shooting guard, small forward guard, smart forward, most of the time. James Harden, when he comes to town, you're like, I don't care what position you are. Who is our best defender? You're guarding. Unless it's a situation where sometimes it's like, okay, we'll let him guard whoever. He's going to get his. We just got to make sure we keep everybody else. You know that game plan people always have for star players? They're going to get theirs, so just make sure everybody else doesn't get theirs, and we should still be able to beat them. James has faced double teams. Y'all remember what Utah did last year in the playoffs, where they were playing this kind of defense where basically they would get behind him and make him and force him to a certain side of the ball where he would have to shoot a certain shot with a certain hand? Like, I mean, think about it. People are literally creating defenses to guard him. There are not many teams that could just send a guy at James and believe, okay, he can guard James up and be able to give James a tough task. Because James is like I said, one of the most elite scorers we have in the NBA. It will probably, at this rate he's going, could go down as one of the greatest of all times to ever score a basketball at the rate, not the way that he is going, because of how efficient, how great, and how amazing he's been at doing it on a day-to-day basis. It is absolutely fantastic to see what James does out there on the court and how he plays the game in such a smooth and extravagant fashion. Another guy you can put into this discussion is Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic came into the league already being ready to score. Never forget the quote: "It's easier to score here than it is in the Euro League." Luka Doncic is a guy who, again, the overseas, the fact that he's learned these fundamentals, and the fact that he has that under his wing, but then he actually has natural talent, it helps. Because Luka's not the most athletic. He's not the fastest. He's not the strongest. The only thing Luka has for him at his position is that he's a taller point guard than most guards. Outside of that, he's going against guys shorter than him, so you may think, oh, it's easier to rip him, it's easier to steal. His ball handling is good. He can pull up, step back, get to the rim, hit the mid-range. Remember, he's 6'8", 6'9". You basically can post Luka Doncic up if you want. Like, Luka can beat you in different ways. Literally, Luka's one of those guys with his ability and his height. Depending on the point guard you play, that will determine how he scores. That's why you really have a lot of teams who don't even put their point guards on Luka Doncic. They'll put their small forwards or somebody on him because they're bigger guys, taller guys, and are better in terms of a one-on-one, mano-a-mano matchup than if you have let's be honest. Like, if you have Isaiah Thomas starting for you, you're not going to have him on Luka Doncic. That's a mismatch all day. He'll post Isaiah up all day long. Not even, I mean, Isaiah Thomas may be a bad example because every point guard can basically do it to him. Or like a Steph Curry. Like, Steph's one of those guys. Like, Steph, realistically, he's not known as the best defenders in the game because he's not a big guy. But, guys like, Luka could easily school him up in one-on-one situations because of his height, his ball skills, his ability to shoot. And Luka could man up Steph. So, offensively, Luka also is a very dynamic scorer. Another guy I think who's a great scorer, obviously, is also Bradley Beal. I think Bradley Beal has really... Now, we can sit here and say, oh, because John Wall is not there. But Bradley Beal really, truly is a guy who can do it all for you offensively. He can step out, shoot a three. He can handle the ball. He can get to the rim. He got to step back. He has a very complete offensive game. I would say Bradley's not a guy who's just like, oh, he's so top end at one thing offensively, but he's very good at everything. So it all comes together where still when you go against Bradley Beal, even if you double team him, especially now, you got to think about it. Teams playing Washington know Bradley Beal's the guy, and he's having career averages in scoring. Some people like to say, oh, he's on a bad team. Of course. Listen, if we know who the primary target scorer is, we're going to start to stop you. Because if you are, you're going to face double teams all the time. And for him to face those double teams and still get the points he gets shows his ability to score. Bradley Beal, listen, even if he has another star, he might not average those exact same points, but he has the ability to go off at any game. And that's what makes him such a great player. He's a guy who could go off at any time, any place, and that's what makes him so great. That's what makes him so great. So that's why if you sleep on him, you don't want to sleep on a guy like Bradley Beal. Also, I gotta bring up Trey again. I feel like I brought him up in 3. Actually, I didn't bring up last segment, actually. So, yeah, Trey's one of the guys who, one of the best scorers in the league. He's developed into one of the best scorers in the league. You don't average 30 and 9 in your second year and not be a good scorer. Because you gotta think about it. This man pull up half court, get to the rim, put you in a knot, score on you in every which way. Trey really is one of the best scorers in the NBA. That's why, he's one of those players, may always be a liability defensively, but he'll give you 30. So you just gotta decide as a team, does that even it out for you? He's kind of like AI. You kind of have to put a team around him where it can cover up his offensive efficiencies, but also at the same time, this man's gonna give you about 30 a night. If he's giving you 30 a night, sometimes 40, sometimes 50, you just gotta put enough around him to also, like I said, play defense, but also score enough, and your team can really be one of the best teams in the league. Because, like I said, scoring is a premium. And obviously, lastly, one of the best scorers I think of the game, again, are like Devin Booker. Again, a guy who's underrated, a guy who doesn't get credit. This man, I feel like, averages 25 points a game every year since he's been in the league. It's just, again, he's on Phoenix. Nobody talks about Devin Booker. But Devin Booker is always up there in the top 5 in scoring every year for a reason, because he is a pure scorer. This man can score the basketball. Never forget that. That man can score the basketball. That's what makes him so great. Really, that is truly what makes him very, very great, because of his ability to score the basketball. But that was your best scorers in the NBA. Coming up next, I'm going to talk about some of the best all-around big men in today's NBA, right here on the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the best scorers in the game, best pure scorers. Talked about that, obviously, gave my opinion on who I thought were some of the best scorers in the game. Because, we have to give appreciation to guys who are just absolutely wonderful to watch offensively and can just move and score with such ability, with such talent, with such style, and that's what creates them, makes them such a great player. And I think that's what makes it such a great thing to see guys like James, like Luka, and others scoring, because it's honestly a wonderful sight to watch them play basketball, and that's always going to be the thing that stands out to me when talking about some of the best scorers when they play basketball. Is it a joy to watch them play? Because you got them guys who average 22, and it's just like, okay, whatever. And you just have some guys who give you that spectacular 22. So it really just depends on whoever you're talking about in that regard. Obviously, some other people might have other people in this discussion. Again, I'm not probably getting to every possible person who deserves that recognition for being one of the better scorers in the league, but But listen, I forgot like Damian and Donovan Mitchell. Like, listen, those guys are great scorers too. So clearly, there's so many great scorers in this league. I mean, you could say LeBron. I mean, people may be like, oh, you haven't said LeBron once this podcast. Listen, LeBron just bigger than everybody else, and that's why you're able to drive at 28 a game. Even though he has a very, very beautiful game himself. But now we're going to get to some of the best big men in the league. So I will consider big men, obviously, power forward centers. Obviously, especially the center position is a dying breed, but we do have still very, very quality big men in this league. And the first guy I want to talk about is Karl-Anthony Towns. Rest in peace to his mom. His mom passed away from COVID-19. All our wishes and prayers go with Karl-Anthony Towns through his trying time in his life, but I want to give him some recognition right now for being one of the best scorers and one of the best big men in general in the NBA. Karl-Anthony Towns, ever since he entered the league, has been a 20-point-a-game scorer. This guy can stretch the floor, get into the paint. Some people sometimes think he's a finesse player. Obviously, we've seen the memes with him and DeMarcus Cousins. And now we think, Karl-Anthony Towns may be a little weak, but he is one of the best big men in this game for a reason. He is, I honestly call him, in his situation, DeMarcus Cousins of the Sacramento Kings. A guy who drops 25 a game, but he's on a bad team, so they never win. He kind of is. But I feel like his game is obviously more dynamic than DeMarcus Cousins. Even though DeMarcus Cousins is one of the best big men. Because DeMarcus Cousins was also bigger than everybody else with his game. Karl-Anthony Towns is kind of a slenderish frame. And he's just able, and he has a little bit better of a ball handle than DeMarcus Cousins by far. And so I think that's what also helps makes him such a great big man. Obviously, he could work defensively better, but I mean, he's, like I say, he's still one of the best big men in this game. He's a guy who he's a guy who can help you win a championship. If when he hits free agency again, listen, a lot of people are going to want him because they know getting a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns can definitely improve your team and improve your roster. For sure. For sure. So, definitely one of the best big men in the league. Obviously, another guy, Joel Embiid. Obviously, Embiid's problem has always just been staying healthy, staying out there on the court. But when Embiid's out there, he is probably the most dominant big man we have in the game. Because Embiid imposes his will on everybody. He's a guy, if he imposes his will and he focuses, sometimes Embiid has those games that you're just like, what the? Against him? Because he tries to play a certain way, and it's just like, because that's the only thing about having big men who can stretch the floor, is that they try to sometimes get into their mind of their guard, I'm going to shoot threes and knock down like 6 or 10. And it's just like, can you at least get like 20 in the paint? And then if you happen to knock down 6 or 10, great job. But Embiid's one of the best dominant big men in the game. He's a beast. He's a guy who can really sit here and just really dominate you night in and night out if you give him the chance. Like, really. Like, he is that dominant. There's really nobody in the league who can guard Joel. It would have to be obviously a bigger guy, but still, even that's a mismatch because Embiid has enough foot speed to get past the biggest guys. And that's what makes him such a hard and dangerous matchup for anyone because of that ability that he has. And so Joel Embiid will always be considered one of the best big men. That's why, you have so many people getting on to him like Shaq and Charles Barkley and others because they see the domination he could have in today's NBA. If he can just get his weight right, if he can get his body right, if he can eat better, Embiid really has all the abilities to be a Hall of Fame big man, averaging 25 and like 12 or 13 a game for his career. If he can just stay healthy and get on the floor. Another great big man in the league, obviously, Nikola Jokic. Joker, obviously a guy who, his game is more, I guess, what definitely some people would call a finesse game because he's a 7-footer But one thing about his game that makes him different is that he's probably the best passing big man in the league. He can also stretch out, hit the 3 ball if needed. He can also post up. That's the only thing about him sometimes is that people feel like for as big as he is, he doesn't have the best offensive post or in the paint game. And so he doesn't basically know, I guess, how to impose his will, so to say. Because if he knew how to impose his will, then, you know what I'm saying, you would say and you would think that, you know, he's that guy. Because I think that's how a lot of people look at it because of the way he plays the game. Because, like I said, he's a guy who, if he can improve his offensive game in the post, Joker could be one of the more dominant players. But again, I think it's that overseas in him. Usually overseas, big men are never dominant because that's not what they're taught to do. They're taught to be fundamentally sound. Joker is fundamentally sound, but he's not taught to be dominant, so to say. So that may be one reason why, but he's definitely still one of the best big men that we have in this league. And don't make any other doubt about it. And obviously another guy is Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is probably the best pure scorer out of all of them. Because obviously he can stretch the floor. He is one of the best defensive players too. Out of all these guys, you know, Jalil B is probably second, but Anthony Davis is the best defender on this list. He is a guy who can dominate you defensively and can dominate you offensively. You see what he's done in the Pelicans. You see what he's done in LA. He's a very dominant guy. He can post you. He can get you in the paint. He can stretch you. He's a mismatch. Anthony Davis is truly a guy that's just like this guy is that dude. You know, that's why some people consider him a top 5 player in the game. Because of that. Because they know with him being so great on both ends to a high level, how can you ignore him being at the top of the list? How can you ignore him being one of the best? It just seems like you can't. Because he's done so much and he's done it at such a high clip. And so Anthony Davis will always be a guy who comes out there day to day. He can get 20, 30 if he wanted to every night. And he does it effortlessly like it's nothing. So I think obviously that's something that definitely stands out. Definitely stands out when you talk about Anthony Davis, when you talk about what he can do, you know, in this game of basketball. So, you know, those are some of the best big men in the game today. I want to give an honorable mention to DeAndre Ayton. He's getting up there too. But yeah, so coming up next, we're going to talk about best pure defenders in the NBA right here on the podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the deadbeat man. in the NBA. Pure big man. So, listen, the position of big man has changed so dramatically in today's NBA. It's not just like it was when Shaq and Wilt and Tim and all them played. It isn't just put your back to the basket. Either you beat him you're just more powerful, you dominate him, or you able to hit a mid range, or you able to hit a hook or a layup, or just rack them down. It's so much more than that. You got to be able to dribble, pass, shoot, dominate, rebound. It's expanded a lot. It's expanded a lot. That's why sometimes it's harder for guys who don't have that type of fluidity in their game to stay relevant in the game of basketball at this level in the NBA, because of how much it's involved and just how teams have all adjusted to that. So now they're trying to have a certain thing happen with the teams that happen in these leagues and seasons. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. I think that comes out of that. But now we're going to get into the best defenders, pure defenders in the league. So we're going to talk about some of the best defenders. So, all right. I think one of the best defenders in the game. We have to talk about a guy, because I was underrated guys first, really. I think Avery Bradley is one of the best defenders in the game. He kind of lost their reputation when he went to Detroit, because I just think since Detroit was it was just weird in Detroit. Detroit's just weird. People forgot about Avery Bradley, forgot he played, forgot he was even in the league. And I think with the Lakers, he started to regain his image as one of the best defensive players in the game. Because of that fact that, if you remember him in Boston, he was locking people down. And now in LA, he is known as the main defensive player. But I feel like he's always been able to do what he's been doing this season, because he's always had the ability, he's always shown it, he's always had the chance. And I think you can't take that away from him, because he's just a very good, efficient basketball player. He'll go against your best guard, or even forward if you need him to, on a day-to-day basis. And you can't take that away from him. Can't take that away from him. Guy who can go out there, play with the best of them, and he'll make it a very, very tough day for anyone who's out there on the court. I also think PJ Tucker, underrated guy. A guy who, remember, PJ Tucker has been assigned to guard guys like Kevin Durant. He's been assigned to guard guys like LeBron. They're telling PJ, you're guarding the best player on a night-to-night basis. And PJ he's not the most athletic, but he's a scrapper, and he'll battle you. If you drop 30, it's going to be a tough 30. It ain't going to be that easy, flawless 30. You're going to have to work against PJ. PJ also has that body where he's not skinny like some defenders, so he's a big, thicker body. So if you're a guy who, like LeBron, that's why they always felt like LeBron would be a good matchup for him. Because, he's not as small. Even though he's a small guy, he's not small, so to say. Or even against guys like Kevin Durant, because he's a little bit thicker, he can't back you down, he can't push you out the way. Kevin Durant has to shoot over you all the time. So PJ Tucker has been assigned with some of the best matchups and professional matchups that they have in the game, and I think that's part of it. He's a guy who is going to come out there and scrap with you on a day-to-day basis, playing that D against anybody, and never backs down. Another guy I think is a great defensive player in this game, Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant never gets credit for his defensive game, because we are so infatuated with him offensively. I just think people think, oh, he's such a great offensive player, offense, and forget Kevin Durant is one of the best players defensively. Remember, he has that frame. He can block shots. He can defend the best guys in the league and lock them down if he has to. And it's just crazy. So I think that's one thing that people forget. Kevin Durant can guard, And he's one of the best players who can lock down anybody. So I think that's very important for him and to see that, because KD does not get that love from the defensive side of the ball. Then, I think another guy you have to talk about is a guy who's really only known for defense. Andre Roberson, still in the league. Andre Roberson. A guy who can't really do too much except play some defense. Guy who basically puts everything into it. That's why he in the league. Because he can play some defense. That's literally it. Imagine a guy, listen, you ain't never gonna see many teams put down a guy who's only give you 4 points a game. Roberson can maybe get you the occasional 3 and the occasional dunk. Outside of that, it's defense. All he does is play D. And all he do play D. What else he gonna do? But yeah, he's one of the better defenders in the game. Andre Iguodala, we've known what he's done with Golden State. Locking down people's top defenders day in and day out. A guy who has played very, very well. Played at a high level. People feel like he changed that series when LeBron was going off in 2016, I believe, and they think he changed that series and he helped convert it to such a great success. Actually, 2015 finals, where he came in there, guarded LeBron, and that changed the series. Scrappy defender, could go against your best guy, again, day in and day out. Even at his advanced age, still out here scrapping with him. Scrapping with the best offensive players we have in this game. I think Jrue Holiday also needs some love. Jrue Holiday, he's a guy who, he's probably going to be in the next segment too, but a guy you definitely have to look at as one of the best defenders in the game at the guard spot. He's a steal machine. His IQ defensively is unmatched and unquestionable. Also, Jimmy Butler. Clearly a guy who, basically, when he was drafted, that's what he was. He was a defensive guy. He was a guy who, you only knew Jimmy Butler to play defense. He would lock you up. And that was literally it. So, literally defensively, he was always on top of his game. He was always playing at a high level. And, he was able to lock down guys. And then, now he's developed himself into a great two-way player in the game. But we will never forget Jimmy Butler was known for defense, and that is something he has hung his hat on for his entire time in the league. Obviously, the other guy, Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart is one of the best defenders at guard in the NBA. A guy who really, could go out there again, guard your best player if he has to. Scrappy guy. Honestly, in today's league, to be a great defender, you gotta be scrappy, you gotta be physical. You gotta do stuff, you gotta be a little unorthodox, you gotta really get up in the guy. Because guys like Paul George, Kawhi, who I'm not going to talk about on this list, even though they are one of the best players, because of the next segment, is that they're big enough where they're just big enough and then have the defensive skill to shut you down. Where Marcus Smart is a smaller guy. He has to really get up under you. He really has to use leverage and positioning to play to be able to get you and lock you down. And same thing with Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley, smaller guy. He has to get you in a certain position, lock you down. Got to get under you. Got to really just really figure you out to be able to go and play that type of defense and for him to be successful. And then lastly, I'm going to mention Rudy Gobert. He's been Defensive Player of the Year twice already. Defensively, they call him the Eiffel Tower for a reason. He's impossible to move. Great shot blocker. Probably the toughest matchup any big man can have on a nightly basis. So there you go. Those are your best pure defenders in the NBA. And now we're going to finish up the show with going with the best two-way players in the game today right here on the podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about some of the best three defenders in the NBA. Now, we're going to talk about the best two-way players in the game. Best two-way players in the game. Obviously, we got to talk about the GOATs, like Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is a guy who always has been a defensive monster. A very likable guy. You know, when he came to the league, he was kind of like Jimmy Butler. More of a defensive guy. Had some offensive talent, but needed to be developed. Honestly, people never thought he would be as good as he is now. Kawhi, you know, he's a beast. Can drop 30 on your head and shut you down the other end. Simple. I mean, that's why he has now entered the territory of maybe being considered the best player in the NBA. You know, Kawhi, Anthony Leonard definitely goes into every game saying, listen, I could do what you can't do to me and then do it back to you on the other end of the court. He's been known as one of the best two-way players in the game for a very long time because of it. And so I think it shows. It shows. I think he's a guy who he's a funny guy because of his personality, the way he talks, the memes we can get out of him. But Kawhi has shown on the court time and time again, he is one of the best players in the league. Both ends. Any night. When he's not taking a, what was it called? What was the thing he was taking a lot of this year? It slipped my mind. Everybody was talking about it. Some type of, he was resting basically when he was healthy, basically. Load management. There you go. When he's not taking load management, he's one of the best, if not the best player on the court every time. Another guy, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Obviously, he's one of the best two-way players in the game. Giannis, with his height, his length, his reach, his body type, this man is a pterodactyl guarding you. Of course he can lock you down. And then on the other hand, he could drop 30. He could drop 30 on you a game with no threes. Giannis is a guy who, why people consider him potentially the best or going to be the best player in this game. Because of that. Because of his ability to do both things. The talent and the skill level he has is unparalleled, unmatched. You know, Giannis won MVP, and some people think he was on the way of winning MVP again this year. And with Milwaukee being one of the best teams defensively and offensively in the league, it is why. I mean, I think Chris Middleton is also a very good two-way player too. And, you know, they have a lot of guys who go both ways. And I think that's why they're so dominant on both sides of the ball. Because sometimes you have a team who just has strict defensive players, and then you got to carry the load with offensive guys, or just offensive players, and then you got like one or two defensive guys. Here, Giannis, team, both ways. That's what makes him so great. And that's great. Obviously, I'm going to bring up Jimmy Butler again, because obviously, again, he has developed himself into one of the best two-way players, in the game. He, like I said, he's the guy who give you 20, 25 a night and still play your best offensive player in the other end. I mean, one of the things we always like to bring into account when we talk about who are the best defenders in the game, also, it's just who do you guard the best player in and out? And can you go back out there and you go out there and score 20 or 25 getting guarded by him or whoever the other team's best defender is? That's what solidifies you as a two-way player. That's what solidifies you as a two-way player. Because of that. Paul George is another guy. Obviously, he's been known as one of the best two-way players since he hit superstardom in Indiana. Because Paul George has always been a great defensive player. Again, he's a long, lengthy guy, tall guy, can guard against the best player. It also dropped 30 on the other end. He's definitely a guy who's came out there and played very well defensively. And has done his job. Paul George gets his work. He gets that lunch box. He goes to work every night. Paul George is probably one of the players you never really hear too much about in terms of what he does on a night-to-night basis, in terms of him and in the respect he gives himself. As he, some people think Paul George is a guy who's not that good, not a superstar. Some people actually think he's really not even that good of a player, surprisingly. And, he's always been a guy who people just criticize, but he's a guy that you cannot deny. In and day out, he gives you both ends of the ball, effort on both ends of the floor every night. And he does it because, he can. He has the ability to. And that's why he's, again, one of the best players that we have in this game on both sides of the ball, both best two-way. And then we have Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson has made his name as one of the best two-way players in the game because Klay is obviously asked, if it's not Iguodala, it's Klay who's asked to guard the best defender in the game. Because, and listen, he's still able to get 20, 25, 30 a game if he has to. Like, remember, Klay's had some of the best offensive explosions in the game. And then he's able to sit here and still go and lock up your other guy. That's what makes him such a great two-way player. So I think that again is what puts him in the position that he's in to be where he is. And I think that's why everybody's been so intrigued, I think, by Klay maybe having his own team one day because of that fact. Because of the fact he could go both ways and he can play at such a high level. Is he a good enough player to maybe be a best player in the team and still be a championship level team? Because he does it on both ends, like I said. And he can be a great scorer if he has to. And he doesn't have to do it with the ball. So he doesn't have to be the main ball handler. I think that's what makes Klay such a curious case. But that's also why he's one of the best two-way players in the game. Obviously, I'm going to throw LeBron in here because when LeBron turns it on, he can play defense. With the best of them. We're so used to what we've seen with him last few years because he's taken, the regular season defensively off to keep himself fresh for the playoffs. But everybody knows that LeBron, it can be one of the best shot blockers, one of the best defenders in the game. This man obviously is a beast offensively. Listen. I remember that playoff series with the Raptors, I think, won a game. And they in their game plan, and they said LeBron, I think the main person who was killing him was DeMar DeRozan. And they said LeBron gave him DeMar DeRozan, and DeMar DeRozan was silent. And because LeBron was able to get him. LeBron can defend if it has to defend. Don't disrespect the king. He is not a washed up king. It's just he doesn't do it night in and night out. Now, you might sit here and say, well, of course that makes him not a two-way player. But how many players do you know can just turn it on defensively and shut you down? LeBron's one of the few players that can do that. Other players, like Trey and Steph tries. Like, Steph tries his hardest to defend you. But you can still drop 30 on Steph easily. Because he's just not big enough. He's just not good enough defensively. LeBron, yeah, he can shut you down if he wants. So a two-way player. But that's going to be the GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in and listening to today's show. I am your host, Brice Lewis. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying clean. Just hang in there. Hopefully we can get basketball back sooner than later. Thank you and have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.